This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game.
Hi, I'm Fabio Ashby, and this is my Meren of Clen Nel Toth. So I've always had a thing for green-black. It's probably my favorite color combination. In this latest Commander series, we had Meren of Clan Nel Toth. Definitely reanimates guys. One of my favorite things to do is bringing the baddies back from the dead. So of course, whenever something dies, you get an experience counter, and at the beginning of each end step, you're going to choose something that's in your graveyard, a creature, and you're going to either get it back into play or back into your hand, depending on how many experience counters you have. With this deck, though, it's very easy to get a ridiculous amount of counters, so there's not really anything you're not going to be able to touch. So we're going to start with our lands. We have Grim Backwoods. It's a really good sack engine and tech land. Unless you just draw a card if they're going to target and remove something, or you can get an extra counter. You're not going to activate it too often, but it's just going to, in a pinch, you'll be able to draw a card and get some stuff. Of course, we have a better sack outlet in High Market. And you got to be able to clean everybody else's graveyards out, so of course we've got Bojuka Bog. Now I do run the cycling set with Life in the Loam, so I do have Tranquil Thicket, Barren Moor, Slippery Karst, and Polluted Mire. So this gives me the ability to get lands back and draw some extra cards. Got some mana fixing in Golgari Guildgate, Jungle Hollow, Command Tower, Tainted Wood, and the Golgari Rot Farm. 2 Vivid lands, the Vivid Marsh, Vivid Grove, and of course Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, just to fix out those colors. Then we've got 12 forests, and then we have 10 swamps. So I was looking always for creatures that I wanted to have die frequently and be able to bring back. Veteran Explorer allows me, of course, to ramp out very quickly. It does give your opponent, land as well, but a lot of times, some people aren't going to be running a lot of basics, and those who don't really pay for it when they can't really go get 2 basic lands. Now we've got Putrid Imp. I do have things that I want to be able to get out of my hand and into my graveyard, so he's a great way to do that. Viscera Seer is one of my sack outlets. You're able to, when people want to wipe the board, you can really get those choice cards that you want by getting rid of some stuff that you don't. Sakura-Tribe Elder, he sacrifices himself, which gives me that experience counter while fetching a land. Very handy. Wood Elves also gets me a forest, and is easier recursion target. Eternal Witness, of course, one of the best recursion targets ever. Lets you touch anything you want in your graveyard, and then with being able to bring her back anytime with or at the end of your turn with Meren, it allows you to replay a lot of stuff. Yavimaya Elder, again, he sacrifices himself, he fetches you land, fixes your stuff. Grandpa's always one of the best 3-drops in the green. Then, of course, we have Solemn Simulacrum, another creature who's really handy to come and have it die and also come into play. It gives you double whammy either way you do it. Disciple of Bolas, again, I want things to die and I want to take full advantage of it, so I'm able to sacrifice some of my bigger creatures, gain life, and draw cards. Never a bad thing to do either one of those. Really, this guy's really, really good. We have Jarad, Golgari Guildgate. A lot of times I'll end up finishing the game with him, not because he gets big for each creature in my graveyard, but because I'm able to throw a lot of my bigger guys at people's face. Just have them, lose that much life is really a huge game swinger. Of course, what come into play and die creature would be better than Thrag Tusk. Gaining 5 life and getting a 3/3 is never bad. And Golgari Grave-Troll, one of the cards that I definitely want to have in my graveyard early game. It lets me pitch, dredge those 6 cards out of my deck, give me more reanimation targets to get things rolling. So Shriek Maw, it'll kill off a guy when you evoke it, but it'll also die, which gives you an experience counter. Again, getting most of the value you can in and out. Acidic Slime is in a way that you can deal with artifacts or troublesome lands or enchantments. Again, being able to recur him over and over again is always fun. Phyrexian Plaguelord. This guy, he's one of the MVPs in the deck. There's lots of ways that you can generate tokens throughout the deck, and being able to basically take control of the board with him is never really hard to do. So definitely one of my favorite cards in the deck, and really, really underrated and strong. Champion of Stray Souls, something that I've been testing out. Allows you to sacrifice guys and get guys back, but it also, you can put it on top of your library, which, you know, when you're putting it in the graveyard constantly, it's actually really nice. Krosan Tusker, another easy way to get creatures into the graveyard, but it also gets you a land, so it, you know, just works out really well. Avenger of Zendikar is one of the ways I can get a large amount of tokens very quickly, especially with things like Veteran Explorer. If I recur that, sacrifice it to the Plaguelord to kill off something, I can get 2 more lands and get 2 triggers. Again, he's one of the main ways that I can just take over the creature aspects of games. Shouldered Whispering Run, nothing more better than making your opponent sacrifice creatures and getting your own creatures back. Especially when, you know, when your opponent tries to deal with this, you can always just pull it right back at the end of turn and then right with Meren and just continue the cycle. The Primordial, man, this guy is ridiculously good. He's always going to be stealing creatures. You can sacrifice it to, you know, all types of different effects and then get it back. So you're always going to be in a multiplayer game getting back all their value creatures. And since I have sack outlets, I can sacrifice them, put them back in the graveyard, and just keep, you know, recycling and returning things back to life. Verdant Force is my other token generator. I was actually surprised how many tokens I usually get out of a game with Verdant Force. Being able that it hits every single upkeep, I mean, it just turns out a really ridiculous amount of tokens, especially when you get them out really early. And then, of course, Avatar of Woe, being able to just destroy creatures is really nice. And a lot of times you're going to have those 10 or more creatures. Sometimes, though, it doesn't even matter because it's going to come into play for free. And then Terastodon. I love blowing things up and making guys. Sometimes I'll even blow up some of my own stuff just to get 3/3s. And ways that we can search out things that we need to get in our graveyard is in Tomb. I mean, I can go get Golgari Grave-Troll or really anything else that I need at that time. I mean, it's just so good at instant speed. Really no reason not to run it at all. Grisly Salvage is also really nice. It's a good way to fill up the graveyard and get, you know, my recursion targets going. Also helps me fix, you know, if I don't get a creature, I can get the land that I need to keep things going. Haro allows me to play out my lands that cycle early without having to worry about not being able to play them. I'm able to either bounce it back with the Golgari Rot Farm to be able to cycle it, or I can just straight sack it to Haro and be able to get my mana that I need. Putrefy is just solid removal for artifacts and creatures. Makeshift Mannequin is one of my reanimation spells. Again, I can just get things back at instant speed, things like the Primordial to steal back everybody's creatures out of the graveyard. Really fun to play during combat when you get that Primordial, because then you take all their guys and block with their own things. Solemn Reclamation is another way I fill up my graveyard but get things that I need. The best thing about this one is I get a creature and a land from my graveyard. So at instant speed, it's really nice to be able to hold back and you know, do everything that the deck wants to do. Get things back to hand, but also fill up the graveyard. Now, of course, we have Reanimate, one of the best cards in black for Reanimation. Really where Reanimation gets its name. Things that I've done with this one, I've gone turn 2 Verdant Force, which is basically unstoppable. Black Sun Zenith is that, you know, in a pinch removal when you need to wipe the board out. I feel that this one is one of the better ones, though, since you're going to be continuously getting it back as long as you keep casting it. And if it does end up in the graveyard, there are ways like Eternal Witness to get it back in your hand, to get it back in your deck if you need to. Mulch is another card, again, that's going to get me stuff into my graveyard as well as put lands in my hands, just to make sure that I consistently hit the land drops. The deck is really mana intensive and it really wants a lot of resources, so being able to get those resources in your hand is super important. Now, of course, we got Life from the Loam. If we're going to be putting lands in the graveyard and things that we want to be able to get them back, but it's also such a great draw engine when you pair it with the cycle lands, because usually you'll get 2 or 3 in your graveyard. you'll cycle 2, draw 2 cards, cycle the third one, dredge back Life from Loam, and then cast Life from Loam, getting all of your cycle lands back, and repeating the process until you get what you need. Exhume, of course, is a great way to reanimate guys. Since I have Bojuka Bog, and there are other ways that I can clean out other people's graveyard, I can usually control what is going to hit with the Exhume. When I Exhume too as well, if they get one creature out, if I've got Shieldred, if I can pull Shieldred back at the beginning of their upkeep, they'll sacrifice their creature that they got back, so it's not really a huge downside. Since I always fill up my graveyard as well, Stitch Together is usually just return target creature from your graveyard to play. I mean, there's just so many ways that you're filling up your graveyard. Threshold is so easy to get. It's not a problem at all. Dread Summons is another way that I can fill my graveyard, but also give me some reanimation targets out of other people's graveyards, as well as making an army, on the spot. Just casting it even for, usually the goal is 6 or 7. Because that'll hit enough guys, but put what you need to into your graveyard. Victimize is also probably one of the better cards. You're able to sacrifice 1 guy and get 2 back. You're always going to end up higher on value with this. You can also do things like returning Eternal Witness to play, getting back the Victimize, and getting another creature. So overall, one of my favorite cards to play. Buried Alive, probably the best way to get creatures into your graveyard right away. So if I get this, definitely my targets are normally Golgari Grave-Troll, Shieldred, and then some kind of mana ramp with either Grandpa or Wood Elves or Veteran Explorer. Gaze of Granite, again, is that reset button that you need sometimes, where you can just completely blow everything up, and the converted mana cost that you need. So being able to scale it is really nice. Again, more Threshold, because I have so many cards in my graveyard. I usually just get those 3 basic lands, put them straight into play tapped, and you can't really go wrong with 3 lands for 3 mana. Now, since I'm filling my graveyard, I do need things to be able to do from that. So Sever the Bloodline is a great flashback card, since it just completely exiles it and everything else. So if someone tries to out-token swarm me or copies things, you're able to just completely remove them with Sever the Bloodline. And again, if you hit it early with Mulch or something else, it still gives you options in the future. Butter and Blood, well, usually we have more creatures, and when we do, they're going to come back. So I don't really care. Again, it's just really cheap early removal to keep things off the board, and it makes, again, the sacrificing it is huge because people aren't able to, give their generals protection or lightning grease, things like that. It doesn't really matter. They just end up dying. Again, we want to gain some life and make people sacrifice creatures. You can even, target yourself if you really need to gain a lot of life, so not a big issue. Again, rebounding is super nice. Jarad's Orders is another one of my favorite cards to run. Much like Buried Alive, this one, you go get 2 creatures, but you're going to get the one that you need to your hand, which is usually, I don't think I've ever cast this and not gotten Eternal Witness to hand. If I don't already have Golgari Grave-Troll in my graveyard, that's the one that goes. So the majority of the time, I'm putting Witness to hand and Grave-Troll to the graveyard. But of course, you have tons of other options depending on what you need. Definitely such a good card. And what reanimation deck wouldn't be complete without a living death? Being able to completely flip the board in your favor is always really nice. Things that you can do with this one, if you get the Primordial out, you pull out their big threats that you don't want to see, you put them in play, and then you living death, and theirs go away, and you get all your guys back. Now, Tooth and Nail is usually one of those auto-win combo cards. I try not to do that because I want the game to be interactive and fun. Of course, if I wanted to, I could put Triskelion and Mikaeus in the deck and just Tooth and Nail and win. But I usually like to have things a little bit more drawn out, and I don't want that instant win combo. So, of course, you can always Tooth and Nail for things like Witness, because then once the creatures come into play and the spell's resolved, you can get Tooth and Nail, put it right back in your hand, and just continue doing that until basically you have whatever you want. Things that I like to do with this card, though, if I already have the Witness going, you can get the Avenger of Zendikar and the Phyrexian Plaguelord, just to be able to, make tons of guys and kill off whatever you need to. Now we've got Decree of Pain. Being able to wipe the board and draw a bunch of cards is always really nice, especially if you can, Your guys come back and theirs don't, and you get tons of counters experience from this. So never, it's always a good thing to play whenever you're behind, or whenever you just need, need cards. Now, Animate Dead is also a really fun one. Again, it steals anything out of anyone's graveyard. So if you don't have any really good targets, or you have a really juicy one in someone else's side of the board, feel free to turn the tides and take their stuff. Oversold Cemetery has just always been, I think, is my favorite card out of the Onslaught block. And since we do usually have a really full graveyard, we're able to just get things back. Then, of course, it goes to your hand, but it's the beginning of your upkeep, so you go to your main phase and play out whatever you need. Zombie Infestation is a good way to be able to discard like my Golgari Grave-Troll or other dead cards that I don't need, or you can also use it with Life from the Loam. You can, Life from the Loam, get back 3 lands, discard 2 of them, cycle the 1 land, dredge it up, and, just keep the zombies coming. Now, Necrogenesis is one of the other cards I use to scrub graveyards from creatures, but it also gives me a 1/1 in the process, which allows me to have more creatures for things like Viscera Seer to be able to sacrifice and scry, or Phyrexian Plaguelord to, just keep that creatures under control. Again, being a very resource-heavy deck, you really want a lot of cards, so Phyrexian is one of the better ones to get tons of cards on a consistent basis. Pattern of Rebirth, again, one of those fun cards that you can use with all the sack outlets you have. You can put it on there. Things I've done with the Pattern of Rebirth is put it on a Golgari Grave-Troll that has 2 counters of it on it, regenerate it twice, it dies to go to the graveyard. Then you just shoulder it with it, or some other things to just keep the cycle of life and death going. Diabolic Servitude, again, you're able to put a creature card from your graveyard into the battlefield. When the creature dies, you of course exile it and returns Diabolic Servitude to your hand. But again, just being able to consistently just have reanimation is so good. Of course, with all the tokens that we're making, and guys that are just dying constantly, you want to be able to draw those cards, so we have a Skull Clamp. Mana Fixing and Ramp in the Soul Ring. Again, you want a lot of mana to be able to get things going, so Soul Ring is one of the better ones to do so. Mirror Sphere, again, a cheap card that lets you get those lands out of your deck and into your hand so you never miss those land drops. Golgari Signet to, again, keep your mana flowing. Oblivion Stone, when you need to wipe the board, you're able to do so. But you're also able to put that Fate counter on Meren to have all your other creatures die, but get those experience counters, and then just reanimate whatever died in the process. Mana Fixing and Darksteel Ingot, really good. And then we'll go ahead and more Mana Ramp and Thran Dynamo. Again, it's super mana intensive. You have a lot of expensive creatures, and you want to do things a lot. Tons of things you want to do in a turn with reanimating creatures and different effects. So you really, again, just need tons of mana, so we run as much as we can. Thanks for watching CMDR Decks. Please subscribe and favorite.